Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arseholics podcast on a Tuesday night. I'm not in my usual spot because, for those of you that can see on the camera, it's a bit all over the place in my living room today, which is a little bit like Arsenal were on the weekend.
Wonderful segue.
See that?
Yeah.
But it's true. And we probably had to give ourselves a day to recover emotionally, but also recover because we drank a lot on Sunday. I was a bit hungover yesterday. I've got Aaron with me because and today is going to be one of those days where it's probably the most I'll probably not look forward to this podcast today to recording this because ultimately even times this season where we've had poor results, there's always been hope. And today is the day where, at least for this season anyway, there's no real hope. There's nowhere that we really go from here with respect to this season. So this is a very different vibe today. And Aaron, and how are you feeling about recording today?
Yeah, you know what? I wasn't as gutted today than I was against some of the other games. For me, I kind of felt that it was, look, I never, maybe you're going to say you're just saying this now, but I've been consistently as I've said on the pod, I never thought we could do it, right?
Yeah.
I never thought we could do it. And I think you guys gave me stick for that. And I remember coming on here saying,
well, not really. I think. But okay, so go on. Let me I'll let you finish. Sorry.
Yeah, this isn't me saying, "Oh, I told you so," because I really wanted to be wrong, and I was really, really hoping you were right. But I think the thing I always said was, we're up against Man City, and I think I said with 13 games to go, I said, you look at every single one of those City games, there is no reason why City won't win all of them. And then we started talking about what is the probability of them winning every single one and all that stuff. But I think the point is, I never really thought we would pull it off, right? I think where I'm a little bit disappointed is kind of how it unraveled and the way it unraveled. And actually, we can talk more about this later on. I think the damage was already done. I was a lot more disappointed after that Southampton game. I was actually really disappointed after Anfield. Anfield was the one that I was really disappointed with when I was like, we really should have won that game. And so actually this one was, for me, it was always going to be very, very unlikely going into this game that even if we'd won, I still would have been I still think this is very unlikely to happen. And look, we've lost. It was kind of, the performance we'll talk about, but it kind of just killed off any faint hope. And actually, part of me feels relieved a bit because I feel like we've been put out of our misery for this, this last period, which has been a bit difficult to deal with. And I think it is what it is. It doesn't stop the fact that it has been a fantastic, incredible season. And I hope we finish it on a high, because that's what the fans deserve. That's what the players deserve. So at least we can just, I hope now we just go on and we end it well and we crack on with next season. And hopefully next season will be just as fun.
I agree. And I think there will be, and maybe we will have an element of that in this podcast when we are, very positively reflecting on what a great season it was. But there will certainly be enough time for that. It's difficult. I find it really hard to, really feel a lot of those positive vibes unless I really dig deep for it right now. And I think, to be honest, right, just going back to what you're saying about, what you thought was going to happen. I didn't think we were going to win the league. I just thought that we could win the league. And I thought that at the very least, we would do really well. But the reason why we wouldn't win it was because City would just win more games than us. Just do that extra bit more. So I think that the bit that I'm disappointed, the bit that I feel really low is I don't think I expected us to whimper out in this way at this point. You could then be more rational about it, I think, and then say, well, if you think about it, right, before the Liverpool game, for us to have won the title before that Liverpool game, it still would have required, assuming that City were going to win most of their games, most if not all, and it looks like they could win all. We would have had to have matched that, and with even the few injuries that we had, I think that would have just been way too unrealistic, right? I don't think we could have expected to lose Saliba and Tomiyasu, and that combination of that required Rob Holding to sort of come in and kind of survive in those periods where we didn't have Jesus, and I know we did sort of come through it, but the fact that we were still managing fitness around that kind of Liverpool, West Ham, Southampton sort of time, and then with some of our other players with tiredness or whatever, I feel like it probably was just too unrealistic to expect that we would be able to just basically win the vast majority of our remaining games. Because I think, performances aside and the results that actually happen aside, I think, the way that Man City have gone about their business, it does mean that if we drew with Liverpool and we lost to Man City and we won every single other game, including the one that's just gone, Man City still would be on track to beat us for the title, such as kind of what they've done. So
yeah,
it is tough. But I mean, let's just but let's talk about the game a little bit, because I guess the question I wanted to ask is, it almost feels like the Newcastle game was a distant memory, but it really wasn't. It was just a week ago. It was the last Premier League game that we played, and we were reflecting on that game as if it was the performance of the season almost. It was the real icing of the cake from the respect of the professionalism curve that the team has come on, and that winning mentality and that kind of grit and that desire and whatever you want to call it. How did we go from having a performance of the season away at probably, arguably the hardest place to go away in the Premier League this year, actually, because I think more teams have taken more points off Man City at the Etihad than at St James's Park, I think. So how do we go and do that? And then a week later, absolutely put in arguably our worst performance of the season and lose 3-0 at home in just as cruncher time. How do we go from that to that in 1 week?
So I reckon you can kind of split that into two things, right? So last week, what happened? I think last week was probably more like it felt like, with hindsight, it was more than just about the title race. I think, the way Arteta talked about it post game, it was about getting revenge. It was about putting right what went wrong at St James's Park last year. And I felt like the players went into that with a desire of like, okay, like forget about the title race. This is about pride. This is about respect. This is about showing what we are as a team. And they're like every Premier League game, it's always fine margins. There were quite a few moments in that game where we could have easily lost it. We could have easily conceded goals, and we scored at the right time. We were clinical, and we went in front, and we did what we needed to do. And on Sunday, I mean, the main thing probably was, look, we lost Zinchenko, and this is a team that, and when you play a Brighton team who, let's be honest, were really were excellent, right? They absolutely killed us, and all their players had really good games, and they are just a really, really good team. And when you're playing a team like Brighton, who are chasing Europe, really hungry, playing really well, you need to be at your best. And we didn't have Zinchenko, and I felt that either caused us to, like, we had Tierney come in, and Tierney just can't do what Zinchenko does, but he also struggles to like, I think we struggle as a team to like set up to cater for Kieran Tierney. And I think the way we played in that first half, we seemed to play a bit like the away team, and we kind of were like pressing Brighton and trying to press from the front. And then I don't really know what happened in the second half, because we just seemed to forget about all of that. We were rubbish in the second half. But I think we didn't. I think we lost too much to play a team against Brighton. So we lost Zinchenko. We obviously lost Saliba. We have players who I think looked really tired, and the emotion of the game was the emotion of the season was showing, I think, and the fact that we knew City had won their very, very difficult game on paper, and it was, so I guess psychologically and schedule-wise difficult. I think all of that just meant that when you're playing a team like Brighton, who are excellent, we just didn't have enough. And I reckon you play that game for another 10 minutes and we probably end up losing 4 or 5-0, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's very different from some of the other games that we probably said if we play another 10 minutes and we probably go on and score another one. But it's weird though, isn't it, Aaron? Because it was the opposite for Brighton. Brighton put in their worst performance of the season last game.
Yeah.
They got battered by Everton, of bloody Everton, right?
Could have done
got
that. Could have done us a favour. And and these are things because it's still fine margins. I know we lost 3-0. I know we said we got battered, but I think a different game where if we take our chances in the first half and we some of those half chances, the Trossard shot, the one where I can't remember, I think there was an Odegaard shot where he didn't really shoot and he kind of blocked it. And there was a couple of final balls that went missing. If we put them away, I think we might just about go and do enough. But I think
it's hard to look at it that way when you lose 3-0, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think after the first goal, I honestly think collectively, we've seen this team come back from so many situations, especially at home when we just concede first all the time nowadays. Conceded first against Southampton, conceded first against Bournemouth. I can't remember who we played last time, probably conceded first then as well. And I just felt like this team all season, especially that attack, has been okay, we've conceded, we've got to go again, get up, go again. And I just felt like after that Brighton goal went in, they were down. It was too much for them. It was another comeback that we just didn't have the energy in the tank for. And you could see, you saw Xhaka, he struggled. You saw Ben White, he really struggled. Martinelli came off after 20 minutes because he was just being taken out, and Trossard came on and he struggled. It was just a struggle for a lot of players. A lot of players have been good and excellent all season. Those players that we rely on, they looked done.
Why is it that? Because it's a combination of youth and experience in the team. Overall, it is youth, I suppose. That we have got a very young team. Now, I don't. What I'm going to say right now probably sounds like I'm saying Brighton are a better team than Arsenal. Obviously, the league table will prove that that's not the case. But Brighton have responded through this season in so many ways, right? They've lost a couple of their big players, like they do every season, and that includes in January when we signed Trossard. They've had a manager change in the middle of the season. Recently, they've tweaked their team a lot, and they've had to because they've randomly, for kind of reasons that aren't necessarily just because of their competitions, they've fallen kind of victim to the fact that other teams have had clashes, and they've ended up with huge fixture congestion around this time. They play, I think, more than Man City or almost at this point in the season, which is really weird. And they're rotating their team, and they didn't have Solly March playing, and they started Ferguson, and they changed it up a little bit. So I guess why can they come to the Emirates with more congested fixtures than we do, change up the team, but look like they've got more ideas, look like they want it more, look a bit fresher? How is that? How is that possible? Because we've only got one game a week. Yes, we've had some injuries. We got unlucky, I think, in this game. Like you say, Zinchenko probably wasn't expected that he would have as serious an injury as he clearly did. Martinelli going off injured in the middle of the game, whatever. But why is it that it just looked like we were done and we were toast?
I think there's a couple of things, right? I think the Tierney thing, losing Zinchenko, is actually huge for us because he, for all his defensive weaknesses, he has completely transformed the way we play. All right. And we simply do not have an alternative for when he's not in the team because we don't have an alternative to do what Zinchenko does because there isn't that player. Right. And then maybe you argue then, okay, Zinchenko's not going to be here, set up differently, and maybe with hindsight, you look at Arteta and say, could he have reacted differently? And
Because
to
isn't that a
like,
recent thing, though, Aaron? And because, sorry to interrupt you, but like towards the beginning half of the season, we were changing up our team. We were tweaking our team slightly in loads of games and big games to kind of gain a competitive advantage. And I go to the Liverpool game at home where, we played Tomiyasu at left back and Zinchenko was fit and Tierney was fit. And we played Tomiyasu at left back.
Tomiyasu can kind of do that, like not a Zinchenko thing, but he can do the kind of like tucking in, playing, stepping up, covering other people. Tierney is an excellent defender, but he simply cannot do what we want him to do. And I think the argument I would put to Arteta is like, Tierney's still a good a good player. Could we have changed to get the most out of Kieran Tierney? But I think Arteta probably thinks that was too much. I think I saw a stat that Kieran Tierney had something like 6 passes in the first half. And I think in a full game, like over 90 minutes, Zinchenko averages, from what I've heard, between like 55 to 60 passes a game. It's a huge difference. So we've basically taken 60 passes out of that team. And I think, and I've said this a few times, right? This team can tolerate 1, maybe 2 absences. But, you look at kind of after 30, 40 minutes, we took out Martinelli. We didn't have Martinelli. We didn't have Zinchenko. We didn't have Saliba. We didn't have Partey for, our own reasons, because Partey, for what, like, mysterious reasons, has completely forgotten how to play football. And that's four of our first choice 11 weren't on the pitch for most of that game. And when you are in a title race, when you then have the other 5 or 6 players, Saka, Ramsdale, Gabriel, Ben White, Odegaard, these guys who have played pretty much every minute of the season. And, it's a combination then of like, the reserves and the squad players coming in haven't been able to do it for a variety of reasons. And the players we've put out have basically played every single minute and are completely knackered. So I think the lessons for next season are going to be like, how do we rotate? How do we ensure that we can maintain this, almost 90-point pace that we did for the first half of the season, but ensure that towards the end we don't drop? Because, if you want to look at it in a similar way, there was a drop off last season. I know last season happened for a variety of reasons as well, but we saw with Saka last season, he was knackered. And he's knackered again this year. So there are trends that Arteta does need to address through rotation, trusting more players, because we're going to have the Champions League as well next year. This was a season where we went out of Europe relatively early. We went out of the Cups relatively early, and still we didn't look physically prepared at the end of the season. Whereas you look at Man City, they peak now. So I think it's both, right? And one has the impact on the other. The fact that we lose 3 or 4 players probably means that the other 5 or 6 players have to play. You can't rotate Saka and play Reece Nelson when you're missing 4 other players. Trossard gets minutes, but Martinelli, like, it's. I think there's a lot of things that unfortunately went wrong, and again, the key theme though is like, we lose 1 or 2 key players at the wrong point in the season, and we just can't cope. And that's something we do need to learn how to do.
And it does sound like there'll almost be some not wholesale, maybe that's the wrong word, but there'll be quite a lot of changes, I imagine, this summer. And we're hearing about some potential ones, and maybe we should expand on that in a second. But just kind of keeping on the point of the game, we let me talk to you about Arteta for a second, because actually, let me frame it in a different way. There's been lots of talk from elements of the media. Gary Neville's been very vocal about it, about Arsenal being too emotional. Yeah. And I think we were very defensive of the team earlier on in the season around those accusations, because, it sounded like what we were getting accused of is those last minute winners against Villa and Bournemouth of celebrating too hard. And I think we all kind of thought that was a bit out of order, and it was just almost human to celebrate in that way, etc. But I've started to reflect on it a little bit more, and I wonder whether there is something that is is in that's true, in the sense that when you have all of these moments, it's not even about the emotional outburst at that, or the emotional kind of outlet at that point in time. It's sort of about the long term, I think, effect of that emotion. And it sort of feels to me, on reflecting on it, where we've gone through this journey this season, the emotions of all of these games, of these kind of, last minute wins, and the kind of celebrations that kind of followed, and some of the stuff after the game, and maybe you partly of the reason of having a young team and whatever. I wonder if that just all got very emotionally tiring. And partly, Arteta was sort of succumbing to it as well. And maybe that's showing, he also was kind of getting in this fairy tale, thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. We could do this, is against all odds, and, all that kind of stuff. And all of that's kind of going on, where, you look at Man City, and I know it's Man City and they've got kind of a different, maybe, caliber of squad, but they've just always, they've kind of gone about their wins, and you don't really hear about it afterwards. You don't really hear much about kind of, them reacting to it in any way or whatever. It's just vanilla, and it's just been that way. And now they're going at this period of the season, and it doesn't look like there's any drop off. They're just getting wins. They're just going to game and just winning and just winning and just winning and just winning. And it's not like kind of elaborate. It's just winning. Is there a bit of that you kind of, I don't know, buy into a little bit more? Do you think that emotions could be playing a part? And I mean that with not just the team, but with Arteta as well.
I do, and I have said this before, I do think some of our players are, at least when I see them on the pitch, too emotional. I've said this about Zinchenko for a while, that the guy is just way too emotional. Like, our senior players are actually some of the most emotional. Like, Jesus sometimes is really emotional. I remember Anfield, I think we discussed this and said both Jesus and Zinchenko just needed to chill out. But I'm not sure you can say that, like, the way we have to be like Man City, because the only way we're going to be like Man City is if we win bloody 5 league titles in a row or whatever it is. And you just are so
and this comes
used
to this is like Russ's point below, right? Which is, I think, to what you're saying right now.
Yeah.
But the bit that I just, again, sorry to interrupt you, but to build into your answer, I suppose, the two players that you mentioned about being really emotional,
No, exactly.
are the two players who have won 4 titles each.
And
And this, to Russ's point, like, why are they like?
And they should. They're right. I think that. So that's probably where I think Gary Neville does have a little bit of a point, which is like, these senior players do need to, like, help cut out some of that emotion. And actually, they should be the regulators of emotion in this team. To be like, yeah, you should celebrate. And like, I think some of the stuff he talks about, when you go and win in the 96th minute against Bournemouth, okay, you should celebrate. Like, I don't think anyone should regulate those celebrations. It was a brilliant game. It was a brilliant feeling, and the players should be proud of themselves, and they should celebrate. Okay, and I think I think there's probably an element of truth in what Gary Neville said, but I think he just surrounded it in nonsense, in the way that, like, when you win the last minute, you should celebrate. When you score a fantastic goal, you should go nuts and you should celebrate. And but is that the reason we lost the league? And is that the reason we're not champions? No, that's like, maybe it's the 10th factor, the 10th most important thing. There's so many important, very, very obvious reasons we are not champions, and we're not going to be champions. And Zinchenko being too emotional, or Gabriel Jesus being too emotional, or whatever he said, I didn't watch it fully, is not the biggest factor. Yeah, I think the biggest factor is we just don't have the squad that is capable of, even at our best, I don't think we were going to match City. City are going to get 96, 97 points this season.
Mad.
That, if we were going to win it, we would have to get basically the highest Premier League points total of any Arsenal team in history, coming from a team that we built to compete for 4th place. So the main reason is, we are simply up against a ridiculously good team who, let's be very direct, have been charged multiple times for cheating and breaking the rules. Secondly, we were going to try and do that, and maybe we might have been able to go far and get those 95, 96 points, but we were going to do it without our best centre-back and losing key players in the run-in and not having, and then also losing his backup. So we lost Saliba and we lost Tomiyasu, and we were basically figuring out how to plug a gap where we've lost 2 players in that position. There is simply no team that can compete with Man City having lost their first choice right centre back and effectively their second choice right centre back. But despite that, we gave it a really, really good go. But ultimately, we just conceded way too many goals since Saliba went out, and we simply haven't been able to address that gap. But even if we had been able to address that gap, we still probably wouldn't have been able to catch them. And then, I think those two are the main reasons why we haven't been able to catch City. And then maybe you can say that, oh, okay, we haven't had a striker that's good enough to like fully plug the gap when we needed something different. Oh, Saka's tired and we didn't have a backup right winger. And then eventually you go down all those reasons and you get to maybe the 9th or 10th thing on the list, which is, sometimes Zinchenko looks a bit too emotional. So
it's a really good point. It's
Gary Neville just scoring points, basically. And I think he's talking nonsense and he's succeeding in winding up a load of Arsenal fans. So I'm sure that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least he was very, very much wrong in his prediction of Man United finishing above Arsenal. That absolutely didn't happen. It is interesting as well, right, that, we are Arsenal getting a lot of attention in the press for how the season has ended. And the fact that we are getting this much attention just because we finished second versus many of the other clubs who were supposed to finish higher than us is, I suppose, a compliment in some ways, but it does kind of show agendas as well, right? I think that we need to focus on the fact, when you reflect on the season on a whole, you have to focus on the fact that, whether you lose the points at the beginning, the middle, or the end, they all count the same. And no one thought that Arsenal were going to get this many points and finish where we're going to finish. So it is really impressive. And I think on that point, we should probably talk about the fans' behavior. Mises really wants us to talk about this. And I think we should. Mises in the comments saying, can we discuss the massive number of fans walk out as the second went in, including a few high-profile YouTube famous fans? Eyes emoji. Baffling considering the season the players have given us. He's absolutely right, Mises, right? Because I mean, we sit in the North Bank, lower, and there are a few, big Arsenal names, in terms of the fan base, in terms of kind of the amount of subscribers their pods have, the amount of followers their social media accounts have. And they really embarrassed themselves, in my opinion, and the club with respect to the fact that there was an obvious exodus after the second goal went in. Now, I'm sure loads of people will give the same, because I leave early because I want to catch a train, I want to catch this, whatever. Well, it wasn't a nighttime game, so it wasn't like you were going to get home at midnight. So we don't have that. This was purely an exodus driven by disappointment of the fact that we were going to lose, and we were probably going to lose quite convincingly. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure you agree. We were devastated. We were disappointed. I was really annoyed. I was pretty drunk as well, and that got me even more upset and annoyed. And in fact, probably goes far to say, so when there were other fans, really great fans, there were loads of really great fans who were still in the stadium. There's many of them who carried on singing really passionately, even when we were losing 3-0. I actually, to be honest, I wasn't one of them. I couldn't bring myself necessarily to be chanting with incredible passion because I was so disappointed at that time. But I wasn't going to walk out on the bloody team after the season that they've given us. I wasn't going to walk out on them. I didn't feel like, let's just get out of here. That's childish. That's just absolute childish. Who do we think we are? So I was very disappointed to see all those fans leave, and it would look worse actually on TV when you see it on TV. And I think it's particularly like the East Stand that tends to kind of really, really kind of dry out sometimes. I think they're the stand where people just flock to the exits. I don't know why, but it looked really crap, and a poor form by the fans that left. I think. What do you reckon?
I'm gonna disagree. No, I'm
You're
not.
on mute.
Oh,
Oh, you're still on mute. Fucking hell, mate.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Just can't operate a mic
All
properly.
right, he's still on mute, and
Can
I've
you
got
not hear
no
me?
idea why he's still on mute. So I'm going to carry on
What?
talking about how rubbish I thought it was. I mean,
Hello?
at the end of the day, right? Like this season has given us so much. It's just given us so much, and we've got a young team that are in the Champions League next year. We should be there supporting them, making them feel exactly how they should feel, which is that they've done a great job. Yes, it was a terrible result, but we've got to remember the amount of results this season that we have played such a massive part in through just our support to that team, right? Times against
Can you
Leicester, for example,
hear me
when we
now?
were going, I think it was right at the beginning of the season when we went a goal down, not, I don't think we went a goal, but when we conceded a goal, Saliba's own goal, for example, that game, the way that the fans really got behind him and the team felt it, and the team came back and we scored immediately afterwards. And the team, in the interviews after the game, talked about how much that meant to them, and we've been doing that throughout the season. And it's like we can't treat it as a contract, right? We can't be like, well, we're only going to do that if you give us the result that we want. So I thought that was pretty poor.
I
Aaron,
would
and still
agree with you.
speechless.
Can you hear
Mate,
me?
your mic has
You
just
can't hear
gone.
me?
It's
I
just
don't
gone.
know.
It's a write-off. Those of you who can't see the video, Aaron is, he's like a mime right now. He might, if I understood sign language, maybe we could do this through sign.
Is it still gone?
Oh no, Aaron and mate, you are.
I have no idea what's going
This
on.
is the disadvantage, right, with having only two of us on the pod. Oh right, hang on a minute. Russ is saying I can hear both of you. Nothing wrong with the sound. So how come I can't hear you? Oh
I
my
don't
God.
know.
All right,
In
Aaron,
which case, I'm going to carry on talking.
Let me figure it out.
And I'm going to hope you can hear me because I'm glad. Thank you, Russ, for being our online sound technician. I think on the fans, I actually am going to disagree with you. I know you can't hear me and can't hear me disagreeing with you, but I am going to disagree with you, Raj. Look, I think it is a shame, and it was a shame that game finished with players who walked out, and that game finished with players who really, like, the players deserved to finish that game and finish the season on a high. And I think the players deserved not seeing a million fans or half the fan base walking out. But you know what? I said, for example, I was not that upset. So I could get up for it and I could go and cheer and like make noise. But everyone kind of, it sounds like a funeral, but everyone kind of grieves differently. And you know what? If some people want to walk out, and if some people want to do something different, and because I think everyone has to show their frustration in a different way, and for a lot of people, the title race did end for us at that game, and that might have been the first time that they really got upset about it. So yeah, I think it's okay if people walk out if they're frustrated, because they have been with the team side by side through thick and thin. Again, it's like the players. They can't, this was just one hurdle, one comeback too much for the players, and I think it might have been one comeback too much for the fans. Speaking of comebacks, can you hear me, Raj?
I could hear you. Could you hear me?
Yeah. That was
what
fun.
happened there. I've got to thank Russ in the comments, mate, because if it wasn't for you, I just thought I was there slagging off Aaron, but clearly it was me. I don't know why. I just disconnected everything and I'm back. What amateur hour? I'm sorry.
It's fine. I was on my own for about 30 seconds, and I think it was the best 30 seconds this podcast has ever had.
That's harsh. That's harsh. But I sound like I caught the end of it, and it sounded like you were basically echoing what I was saying there.
No, I actually wasn't.
well.
I wasn't.
You
I
weren't?
was slightly disagreeing with you.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
So I will summarize. I said that, look, I think it was a shame that the game ended with a half-empty stadium, probably less. But actually, I think for a lot of people, this was their first time that they could really like get upset. And I think, who are we to tell players, fans, how to get upset? And if they want to walk out, like, because this ground has been full up until the 91st minute. There are a few people that leave all the time, but largely up until the 91st minute. And as long as they're back against Wolves, and as long as they're back and they're cheering this team, because this team deserve like a lap of honor, and they deserve applause, and they deserve us singing their name for 90 minutes against Wolves, regardless of what happens. Look, it did surprise me how many players and how many fans walked out after the second goal, especially because there was quite a bit of time left, I felt. But
I think that's my main point here, right? Like, you can't. There's enough time.
I think
we're
people
playing
were just
rubbish,
broken,
but you never know.
I think people were like, I think a lot of people probably that was a tipping point for them. And let's see, as long as the negativity doesn't creep back in, I don't want this. Like, if they start doing that again next season, 5 games in, and let's say we haven't had the best start, and then they start walking out, I'll agree with you. But for one game, I can probably just let them off.
I think I'm being very nice, actually. I mean, look, I still feel it's a bit childish because I feel, we're second in the league, and there are teams that really, really, really struggle to get a win at all in this league. But
I think some of these fans probably really believe that we were going to win the league. Like I said, I never believed, and therefore when we didn't get it, I was still like, we're still second, we're doing really well. But I reckon there are a few thousands of fans that genuinely thought that we could do it. And I think, like, I'm not like on Sunday and Monday morning when I woke up, I wasn't like, I remember how I felt like after the Newcastle game last season, right? Where I don't think I watched football for like another 2 weeks after that because I couldn't just watch anything, right? I didn't feel like that against Brighton. So, but people are different. Man. People are different.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Like, I think that at the same time, as much as I wouldn't want to have walked out on the team, and I'm proud of the team and that. Like, it doesn't. I mean, you can still be angry, and you can still think that the performance was poor. Like, I thought we played really badly, and I thought that there was a lack of professionalism in some of our players against Brighton. I thought Arteta had a really bad game, really, really bad game. And
can we talk about that briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. Fine. Let's do that. Anyway, my point is that I agree with all those things that they had. That but I still felt like overall you've got to stay there and support your team because you never know, and this team is going to need to bounce back and still believe that we believe in them. But okay, look, let's sorry, I'm gonna read out Maya's comments before we move on. Maya says, Aaron, you're being too nice, mate. Too many of our fans are spoiled and fickle. Big part of the reason why our fan base gets such a bad name. I'm with you there, Miles. No, Aaron and guys just talking complete nonsense. Can't believe anyone left early considering comebacks we've seen this season. Yeah, I mean, Miles.
No, I just think like, look, I'm just not like, given the season we've had, I think I don't want the narrative now to be Arsenal fans arguing with each other about who leaves early, who supports the team. Like, let them do what, if they want to go early, that's on them. If they do it once, if they keep doing it, then I'm with you. Like, it's nonsense. But if it's a one-off, and I think it has been a one-off because the fans have been there, I think.
Yeah, but that's because we've been incredible this season.
Yeah.
No, I get you, and I don't think it's going to be something. Like, it's not going to be something that causes huge division in the fan base. Yes, we're talking about it because we're an Arsenal podcast, and we were there. That's what we're going to do. But let us move on to the Arteta thing. Like, so, I thought he had a bad game. We actually praised him so much against Newcastle. About his team selection, his subs, his tactics, kind of whatever he said, how he behaved in the pre-match conference, everything about it. Bruno De Zerbi before this game and after the Everton game was very stoic in saying that against Arsenal people would see the real Brighton again. Clearly whatever he said to motivate his team worked. In a lot of the tactical analysis that I've read since the game, which hasn't been that much because I just really didn't feel like getting into it that much, and but a lot of the stuff seems to suggest that Bruno De Zerbi set them up in an incredibly unique way and did some really, really clever things, including really interesting things like taking Levi Colwill, the centre back, and having him basically man mark Odegaard, like come out of natural set
really
positions to just. Yeah, to just do that. Arteta, on the other hand, I'm not sure that I can't think of a tactical decision that he got that seemed to have made any sort of positive bearing on our attack and any positive bearing on our defense. I didn't see anything. I mean, and the subs didn't really make a difference. I think any of the subs were particularly good subs. I don't think they were bad subs. I think they were all bad subs. But I think whatever he did, he didn't motivate them enough. He didn't get them, playing in a way in which it changed kind of the flow of the game. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought, I don't know if they were bad subs, but you're right. They certainly didn't make us better. They probably made us worse. But there were some theories on a couple of other podcasts that actually the subs he made were out of frustration rather than like not trying to win the game, but actually like they were quite spiteful. And I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, right? So I think the theories are that, look, he brought on Reece Nelson, he brought on Thomas Partey, he brought on Eddie Nketiah, and then he brought on Smith Rowe, and he took off Xhaka, Jorginho, Jesus, and Odegaard. And I think it was more like these are the players that you're not on for a reason, and now I'm bringing you on. Like, show me you are good enough to deserve being here next season. Because you argue you argue that Reece Nelson. I actually thought Reece Nelson did very well when he came on and has done very well. But Thomas Partey, again, didn't look very good when he came on. Eddie Nketiah hasn't looked good for a long time now. And I think I would argue that Arteta seems to have made his mind up on him. And Emile Smith Rowe, again, he comes on and, he's given those kind of, he's a sub of last resort, right? He came on against City when we were 3-0 down or 3-1 down, or what I don't remember. What was the score against City? 3-0, 4-0, 4-1? I can't remember. 4-1.
You predicted it right, remember?
Yeah, of course. 3-1, I think he came on, or even 4-1, and he was given like some, like what they call dead minutes. What do you think? Do you think there was a message behind those subs? Do you think there was psychology behind those subs? Or do you think that they were just the best players to bring on and he was just trying something different?
No, I don't agree with that. And Russ in the comments is kind of suggesting that there was something subliminal there as well, with saying Arteta's subs were a plea to the board. I disagree with I disagree with the idea that there was anything sinister in any way, or anything kind of there was any conspiracy around it. Look, at the end of the day, we were losing. We weren't doing well. Even if we were doing okay, you still need to make subs. But we weren't doing well, so we had to make subs. I think that theory that you've sort of said suggests that anyone that he would have brought on is just someone that he's basically saying, show me what you can do, otherwise I'm going to sell you. As in, who else was he supposed to bring on? Those were the people that he brought on were probably the best people to bring on. There's a question mark against all of those names. I agree with you that there's a question mark as to whether they all have like futures at Arsenal. But isn't that the point? Isn't the point that when you are playing well, you're in the team. When there's question marks over you, you're not in the team. But then the idea is that you come off the bench and then you do good things, and that's just how football has always worked. So I don't. It's not the substitutions that he made in isolation that bother me, apart from Odegaard coming off, because like you've mentioned in the past around how we rarely sort of play well without Partey. I don't really understand any rationale of taking Martin Odegaard off the pitch when you're trying to look for goals. Like when has that worked? When has it worked?
Yeah, I think,
and he's usually the guy who scores
Xhaka as well. Yeah.
Yeah, fine, but at least with Xhaka, you can kind of go, all right, fine, whatever. It looked like what he did was he moved to basically having Partey as a sole base, and then had kind of more attacking players. So you just had one kind of holding player, and that's what you want to do. Okay, fine, whatever. But in what universe is taking your best number 10 off and your captain, clearly one of Arteta's favorites anyway? So there's no conspiracy there. Just don't understand how you expect us to play if we're chasing goals, multiple, how you expect that to work out positively. That for me was weird. Unless you thought there was some kind of fitness thing there, that was weird.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where it kind of just highlights that the players that we brought on, that it was just a reminder that this was a squad that was built to compete with Tottenham, Manchester United, and that was it, really. Like, that was a challenge, right? Finish above Spurs and Man United, and we probably get top four. And what we've ended up with is, I was just taking a look at what City did at the weekend. They took off Gundogan, they brought on Bernardo Silva, they took off Haaland, they brought on Jack Grealish, and they took off Rodri, and they brought on Calvin Phillips.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
We can't do that, right? We can't do that, yeah. And that's the level that we have to get to eventually. And I'm sure we'll talk about this in future podcasts where we discuss the squad, how we're going to improve it. But we brought on, like I said, Smith Rowe, Reece Nelson, Thomas Partey, who, on another day is a very, very good player and has been one of our best players this season. But for reasons that I genuinely don't understand why, he's just become rubbish over the last 3 or 4 games. And that those players aren't unfortunately good enough. And we're going to have a real look at this squad in summer, and there's going to be some players that, if we want to progress, and if now the challenge is to push Manchester City, there are going to be players that we like that are good players that we let go. Very similar to how Manchester City let go of Gabriel Jesus and let go of Zinchenko.
Good point.
They were like, sod it, we need to get better, and we haven't got space in the squad for those two. And there's a team that wants to buy them, and they probably underestimated us a little bit, but they got rid of them and they went on and said, we're going to do more. The same thing with Cancelo. They were like, this guy, we need better, or whatever reason, and they let him go. And we're going to have to be ruthless with some of these players that we really, really like, because they're good people, because they've shown in the past that they are good players. Like Kieran Tierney is a really good example. We were devastated when he was injured 2 years ago, because he was like everything to us. And now we're like, he had 7 passes in that first half, and he can't play the system that we want to play because Zinchenko's come in. And now all we want is these dynamic left backs who can play as midfielders, and that's the ask now. Smith Rowe, who we thought was great, who was our saviour for huge games. Now we're saying, well, actually, Trossard's better than him, and kind of does the same sort of thing. Should we let him go? And maybe now's a good time. Sorry to hijack your hosting, Raj, but should we discuss a certain Granit Xhaka?
We should. I think it's a good time to move on to that. So relating to this kind of, topic of squad reassembly, one of the things that we debated, Miles made a comment about this earlier on in the pod. I'm going to get it up here, where he said, I want a repeat of that post Brighton pub chat, please, chaps. Because basically, after the game, when we were in the Rocket, drowning our sorrows, we started just reflecting a little bit about the squad, and we were quite divided about the surgery that's needed, and who we think should go and stuff like this. Aaron, and you for many weeks, maybe months, you've been advocating for Granit Xhaka to leave in the summer. I won't put words in your mouth, but that is, although you have acknowledged that he's had a good season, it's not that you've been, kind of burying your head in the sand and pretending that he's had a bad season. But I think you've thought that it was the right thing to do to move him on this summer. And Myers and I didn't agree with you, but it sounds like all the relevant parties do agree with you, including Xhaka, in the sense that it sounds like the news that's breaking today is that Granit Xhaka has agreed with Arsenal that he's going to be allowed to leave in the summer for a new challenge. It sounds like it's something that Xhaka has wanted, and Arteta and Arsenal have said that's fine. It sounds like Leverkusen are the potential favourite to sign him, allegedly having agreed a fee which I think sounds around 15 million euros, around that much or something like that. So it sounds like, a departure is certain. Well done. You called it. I mean, how do you feel about it?
I don't know, to be honest. I really, really like watching Xhaka this season. Because I think because I think the half the reason I really like watching him is I can't believe he's the same guy.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
like, who
yeah.
is this guy that's just come out and actually been a really good number 8 for us that we've basically got from converting this clumsy number 6 who's going to cost us points consistently over the last 5 or 6 years to actually one of the best number 8s in the league. Um, and but no, I think you look at the team, there are some players that you're like, you are going to be either first choice for that position or one of the first choices for that position for the next 5 or 6 years, right? And we don't need to name names, but there are probably like 6 or 7 of those players that you can kind of guarantee. Then there are like probably 1 or 2 gaps in the squad, where especially that first 11 or like the first or second choice 11 in that position, you're like, oh, we definitely have gaps. Like right centre back, we don't have a second choice, so we don't have a rotational option, right? Um, and then there are some players where you're like, oh, I'm not sure if like there is a clear way to upgrade in that position, and I think Granit Xhaka kind of falls into that point where he has done a very good job, but he was never intended to do that job. And I think, the easy comparison to make, I think this might have been you, Raj, that said this in the pub, was look at Gundogan and look at what Gundogan does for City in a similar-ish role in central midfield, which is, single-handedly winning them games sometimes, like because he
Yeah, I think
adds
the comparison
goals
I
and
made is Gundogan is their El Neni.
yeah, exactly. But he's come in and he's not even their first choice. And you put Gundogan in
That's what I
the
mean.
Xhaka role, he will
Yeah.
do, like, he adds goals, right? And we've
Mm.
got this structure now where we've spread the goals out to a lot of our players, right? Especially the 2 wide boys, Martinelli and Saka. And actually, if we can add some goals while still adding that defensive running ability and that defensive responsibility and that defensive awareness, I think we have a very, very good player on our hands. And I know we've been linked with Declan Rice, and I think I'd be really keen if we get that done to see where Arteta sees him play, like if he sees him as the 8 or if he sees him as the 6. But I think actually, if we can get money for Xhaka and there are players interested in him and there are teams interested in him, and it sounds like I'm surprised it's Leverkusen. I thought there'd be much better teams than Leverkusen interested. And I know Russ is saying in the comments that Xhaka's wife wants to go back to Germany, and maybe there's a link there. But I
Well,
just
the
felt
other
that
link there's
he's.
that Leverkusen is partly because apparently, Musa Diaby from Leverkusen is someone we're interested in. So could this be linked?
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I think it kind of just makes sense for everyone. He's going to turn 31 this year. Probably won't. I don't know if you're going to give him another contract at some point. His legs will, his fitness will fall off. He's been very reliable fitness wise generally, but at some point that will dip. And actually, we want a team that's consistently getting better every year. And can you say that Granit Xhaka is going to get better every year for the next 3 years? I think almost certainly not. So why don't we go and sign 2 players that can get better every single year?
Yeah, because I mean, I think the reason why I'm surprised about it is less because I think that he's had a good season, which he's that level that I think we need. We need to improve from Xhaka. Don't get me wrong. Regardless of the news today, I absolutely believe that we need to go sign a better number 8. I couldn't see it happening because if you look at the 4, really, if you look at our 4 central midfield options, I suppose, right? So we've got ignoring Fabio Vieira for a second, because arguably he actually, in theory, can play higher up the pitch as well. But Xhaka, Partey, El Neni, and Lokonga. Okay, and if you look at those 4, and Jorginho, sorry. If you look at those 5 players, it's not. You wouldn't say that any of them are nailed on to start next season, and you wouldn't say that any of them are absolutely nailed to stay at the club next season. El Neni might likely leave if I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves on a free somewhere. Lokonga, it seems like he's really out of favor, and it seems like Burnley are apparently interested because company rates him or whatever. So both those players, probably not. Xhaka now seems like he's leaving. Partey, I don't know, like does. I mean, if we're pursuing Declan Rice, and then I don't know what that means for Partey, and also, yeah, like you say, it's sort of fallen off a cliff a little bit. Jorginho, is it is he going to be happy kind of in this kind of role, and was he always envisaging this was actually just going to be a short term thing? I don't know, but my point is, like, it's a real central midfield revolution that we can see in the summer, and I just didn't think that out of all those players, I actually thought that Xhaka was probably the least likely one for us to sell, because I thought they would just thought he's respected in the dressing room, he's kind of had this redemption season, he he's playing in the Champions League, and I correct if I'm wrong, but I don't think Arsenal have been in the Champions League since he joined the club. I don't think we have. So the first season in the Champions League, all that, I just didn't see it happening. But I am surprised by it.
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
hope. Yeah, go on.
I don't know where. I still don't know where Xhaka's heart is. Like I think Xhaka is just this ultimate professional who turns up and does a good job. I don't know if he actually loves it here though. Like I still think there's something from that Palace game that sits deep inside him where he's never loved this club. But he continues to turn up, continues to train well, continues to work hard, and he's upped his level, and he seems like the type of guy who plays for his teammates, plays for his manager, and it's kind of had a bit of a weird relationship with the fans, and maybe he just wants a fresh start to say, like, look, I know what I'm good at now. I've been recognized. I've done what I need to do here at Arsenal, and I can leave on a high, and actually I can go to Leverkusen, might be beneficial for family reasons, and can just get a new long contract, probably 3 years, 4 years, and just do something fun there where I'm happy. And look, I think the other thing is we're not Man City in the sense that, like, one of the things that really annoys me about football nowadays is that teams fans look at what Man City do and then just assume that every other club can do it. Like, we're not in a position where we can turn down money for players, like good money or reasonable money, right? If good money comes in for Granit Xhaka, a player who we can upgrade on, we kind of have to still sell. Because we have more impactful players that we can buy. If there are some players who are like unsellable, but actually there's still a big chunk of this squad where if we get good money for them, we probably do have to consider selling. And like Xhaka's one, Partey, I'd probably say is another one. Most of that midfield group actually, except Vieira because he's just come in. Like, if good money comes in for Jorginho, I think we probably sell him. Money comes in for Elneny, even if good money comes in for Partey, given the age of that group, and goes back to that criteria of, are these players going to be here for the next 4 or 5 years, continuously improving every year? I don't think any of them will. If money comes in for any player that doesn't meet that criteria of being that guy for the next 4 or 5 years, I think we look at selling. And the same thing with Tierney, same thing with Smith Rowe, same thing with Reece Nelson. Well, Reece Nelson's out of contract. There's going to be a bunch of players where we literally have to be ruthless and say, look, we need to buy players who are continuously improving under this manager, under this system, to push us towards the title. And if they don't meet that criteria, if we get good money, we have to consider selling, because we can then spend that money on players that do meet that criteria.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one of the challenges will be, even if we are getting money for some people like Xhaka, and say if it's 15 million, like, many of the players that we're targeting cost considerably more. So I suppose, every little helps, and it all kind of builds up. And there's also wages to think about as well, about, managing the wage bill to facilitate some of those players. So look, absolutely, I can really see this summer being an extremely interesting summer for ins and outs at Arsenal, because I do think that KSE will look at it and say, we backed this manager when it was really tough, and we thought that he could get into the top four, and we might be able to create a competitive side. And he's proved that to us. He's done that. So well done. Let's pat ourselves on the back. But they probably also looked at all these other clubs like Newcastle, and just even some of the clubs that have done unexpectedly poor this season, like Liverpool, like Chelsea, and think that hell, it's going to be really difficult. And if we don't try and solidify our position as a Champions League team, then we'll probably just drop straight back out of it. So I think it will be really interesting because, for them, what's the alternative? If you don't do that, then you're basically putting at a huge risk of staying in the top four. And then what? And then getting back in is incredibly difficult. I'll be very surprised if a team like, for example, Tottenham make it back in the top four for a long time now. I think it'll be really, 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 really hard for them. I'm not saying that because I'm an Arsenal fan and I like Tottenham, but I think it's just so hard to kind of break it. So now we're there. I think we're gonna have to stay. So I agree. I think we're gonna have to be really ruthless this summer. And I think there might be some of those sales that you talked about, like your T&Es or whatever, maybe.
You know what? I think we've actually done the hard part now. This is the easy part in some sense, which is the hard part is getting the manager, getting the scouts, getting the world-class young players, and getting the core and the spine of the team right and balanced, and the system and the vision and all of that stuff, right? So many clubs, especially the clubs around us, haven't been able to do that, right? Man United, Chelsea. Man United maybe getting there. Chelsea certainly not. Liverpool, a good club, but haven't really figured it out. So many clubs have just not done that, right? The actual easy part now is when you've got a good team, you've got a system, you've got a manager, you've got the scouts, you've got something that's working well, and you've got the money coming in from Champions League. It's actually quite easy to say, actually, we want to go and find a better number 8 than Granit Xhaka. We've got 100 million to spend on him. Let's go and buy the best potential number 8 in the world, in the Premier League, in Declan Rice, and go and do that. And it's going to be super interesting to see how we do that. And yes, we need to sell, but it's quite easy right now when we're like, should we sell Granit Xhaka for 15 million and spend some of that, put it towards buying Declan Rice for 100 million? Yeah, of course you do. It's easy. And we can do that now because we've done the hard part. Declan Rice wouldn't have come to us 2 years ago when we were sitting 8th. And we couldn't have been like, shall we sell Xhaka? Because Xhaka was rubbish then. He probably wasn't worth 15 million 2 years ago. And we certainly wouldn't have the money or the appetite or the willingness or the system or the manager to attract a player like Declan Rice. So we really have to.
You're right. We've done the hard bit,
and go bang, and now we can get those big names in.
Totally agree, mate. So I'm getting a comment from Jana saying that, Raj, you look like you've gone through some rough times recently with that beard. Honestly, I was contemplating shaving after this podcast, but I thought, is it too late? Can I be asked? But because of your comment, Jana, I'm actually going to go shave. I have let it get out of control a little bit. Maybe it didn't help.
At Chelsea beard.
I guess so. That's probably, I don't know. Probably should be a bit worried about my own job then, I guess. But I got some comments about it at work today as well. So I might have a shave. Shall we? We've gone past the hour mark. Should we just look at Nottingham Forest very, very briefly? It seems like not one that we might have to dissect too much, and not one I know that I know it sounds really harsh, but care about so much in some ways. Nottingham Forest, because of their win against Southampton, and because of Leicester losing, because of Everton losing, they're actually not in an awful place. That I think they're still going to be desperate to win, but it's not as kind of dire. I think that they are 15th, I want to say, or 16th. Basically, they're a couple of points above the relegation zone. I'm just getting the league table up. But again, this is 16th, and so they are 16th with 34 points. Yeah, so 16th with 34 points. Leeds are 18th with 31. So yes, it's 3 points. Actually, it's quite a lot, for a relegation battling team at this point of the season. But given that you don't really back those teams to get wins, but I think Nottingham Forest are still going to play out their skins, right? And win. What do we have to motivate ourselves? I think there's still going to be a lot of disappointment in that squad. For me, I think we're going to lose. I think we're going to lose like 3-1.
Really?
Yeah, I think we are.
I think the opposite.
I
I think we'll smash them. I think we'll like play incredible now that the pressure's off. I think we'll win like 4 or 5-0.
but okay. What if we, okay, pressure off is one thing, but you need something to motivate yourselves, right? And this season, when we've had the pressure off, we've still motivated ourselves by thinking we've still had that title race. There's still been enough time, so it's still possible. But the guys are going to go into this game at Nottingham Forest, and they know that it's done, right? And they know that we are second, so great. We can't finish any higher than second. We can't finish any lower than second. And you're playing against a team who've got something to genuinely fight for, and that always seems to make a difference at this time. And Nottingham Forest aren't. I keep saying bloody Newcastle. Nottingham Forest aren't. Yeah, like they've been disappointing this year, given the amount of money they've spent to try and stay up. But they have pulled off some decent results on their day. I mean, they drew with City at home.
They did,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure they did. I think so. They beat Liverpool at home.
I just
they
think
play with desire. I don't know. Yeah,
we're still a way better team than
of course, but it
Forest,
doesn't work
right?
like that always, does it?
I think we might rotate a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if Thomas Partey comes back into the team. We'll obviously have to keep running with Tierney at left back. What would have been really interesting, actually, is if we had a right centre back, maybe we could have given Kivior, because I think Kivior can play left back as well. Seeing Kivior at left back, but we obviously can't do that because of the other issues in our defence. So yeah, I think the back four will be the same. Maybe even gives Turner a game, and gives Ramsdale a rest. But I think we'll just play well, and I think we'll just let Saka. I can see Saka getting a couple of goals. I can see. Depends if like Martinelli might not be fit, but maybe Trossard deserves although he was rubbish last game, I think he deserves a run out. And maybe this is a game where Jesus finds his shooting boots and it all goes in.
Maybe. I agree that we might see some rotation in a way, like kind of it's rotating players back in, if anything. But I don't know, man. I can't really see it personally. I think like I don't know if I'd rather we gave someone like I was going to say that play someone like Emile Smith Rowe and Vieira, but do you really want to? I mean, like again, I feel like we can't take it if we take it a bit easy in that way and start kind of doing a few things like that. Surely we'll lose. I mean, this is the Premier League.
Yeah, but also keep in mind that it's still not officially over, right? So I'm not saying that in terms of like we have a chance of winning it, but I don't think Arteta, like if we draw, then I think officially Man City are champions, or at least maybe on goal difference they are. And if we lose, Man City are like officially champions. I don't think Arteta would want to hand them the title like this. I think he would want to make them win, want them to be in a position where they have to win it rather than we just give it to them. And I think there's a little bit of motivation there where actually just pride probably kicks in and you kind of just say like, look, I know there's a 0.001% chance that they don't wrap this up in the week or so, but just go and do your job and win what you have left and then see what happens.
Yeah. Fair enough. I think if we play our best team, well, if we play what Arteta thinks his best team is and doesn't, I won't like it. Yeah, best team left. Then, but perhaps, and actually maybe I'm not giving us enough credit. And maybe I'm giving Nottingham Forest too much credit. But I don't know. I feel like for some reason there's something in me telling me that I can't visualize them after what happened against Brighton. I just can't visualize it. Knowing that City are on the verge of winning the title, I can't visualize them going all out, balls to the walls, and putting in the kind of performance that you need to do when you go away from home. And I know Russ has made an important point, which is our away form is better than at home. That's absolutely true. We're incredible away from home this season, absolutely incredible. To think about some of the games that we've dropped points in. I mean, games we probably should never have lost. Really, not lost, but games that we should have won. West Ham, Liverpool, for example. But anyway, yeah. Look, fine. Enough said. All right. Listen, I think we call it a day. Thanks for recording me, Aaron, and sorry to all our listeners for the technical mix-up, which turned out to be my fault. I do apologize for that. But yeah, hopefully it just gave you something interesting to something different in this. Not that you've had enough to deal with Arsenal being so rubbish over the weekend. But anyway, look, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening in. I think we had a number of viewers who have joined live. And thank you, Russ, Jana, Mice, for the comments. And everyone, continue to please show your support to us like you have. You've just been awesome throughout this season. Please don't walk out on us, in the middle of our podcast. We are sensitive like that.
Well, it's not going to help with you slagging off all our fan base, mate.
Yeah, I know that's true.
We've lost about 1 million fans now.
That's true. That's true. All right, everyone. Thank you very much. Cheers, Aaron.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
See ya. Bye.